Welcome into NHL Tonight. First shift for Tuesday, March the 11th, 2025. EJ Raddick alongside Corey Schneider. Good to have you back.
Good to be here. It's been a while.
Yeah, late in the last night, Toronto and Utah shootout.
Yes. Don't see those very often anymore.
Did you like the shootout?
I mean, I hated shootouts as a goalie. Maybe because I wasn't very good at them, and I didn't always get the most offensive support. But as a goalie, it just wasn't my thing. But you got to live. I mean, we had a lot of them when I played.
Yeah, that's right.
Now with the 3-on-3, obviously less and less. But it was fun to see one last night.
Yeah, fewer of them. Toronto ends up getting the win, so they needed those 2 points to get back on track. Let's get to first things first, because wow, it was an interesting night last night. Not a lot of games, but Ottawa and Detroit. I mean, I'm so glad I got a goalie here today. Because Linus Ullmark, I mean, it was a shooting gallery literally in the second period. He ends up with 48 saves, and Ottawa sticks it to the Red Wings 2-1. They get a late goal, and there it is on the power play by, of course, Dylan Cozens.
Naturally.
Just comes over from the Buffalo Sabres. But this was a crazy game, and the Red Wings scored after the buzzer. You can see it here.
Yeah,
and it was it was I shouldn't say well after, right? But watching the game live, I knew it was after, even though the Red Wings didn't celebrate. But a great game for Linus Ullmark. You can see here the Senators now with that first wild card with 71 points. How good do you feel if you're a goalie after a performance like? Because you had many games like that too, where you played really well and you feel like you basically were the guy that night. How does that feel?
It feels great. I mean, especially this time of year when Ottawa's really making a push to get into the playoffs for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
This is why they went and got him. These are games that they would have lost in years past when this time of the year came around and they were sniffing the playoffs but couldn't quite get enough momentum to get in. So he earned his paycheck last night. I mean, these are the games you live for. I think by playing in Boston and you learn how to play in these games, that counts for something. So he's coming in from a good organization that's won these kind of games, and he can settle down this Ottawa team and say, hey, look, every now and then the goalie's got to steal one, especially when you have a desperate Detroit team who's also trying to get in. And I think that's been part of the difference this year. It took him a minute to get settled and get his feet underneath him to start the year, but since he's come back from that injury and prior to it, he's been everything they could have asked for when they acquired him. So this is exactly what they needed this year.
And how about that second period? 27 shots. I mean, again, I ask you, in those moments when you're feeling it, I mean, like, bring them on, right?
That's right.
It's crazy, but you get it done.
When you're in the zone, I was going to say, 27 is a lot. I had a few that got to 20, but 27, I was trying to think, like, that's about as many as you can get. So clearly top 5 in the last 25 years. There are those nights where you just say, hey, I'm going to stop everything I can see or everything that comes at me. And last night was one of those nights. Sometimes it can wear you down a little bit. Yeah. But after the second, you're like, all right, boys, hey, let's lock it up a little bit. I can take 10 or 12 in the third, but 27, I need a few extra drinks or bananas in between periods here to recharge for the third. But he plays a quiet game. I think he plays an efficient game, and that allows him to handle that kind of workload and still be strong in the third period.
And I always think, too, when on a night like that, you're feeling it, sometimes pucks do hit you along the way.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an element of good fortune, right? Because some nights you probably feel great and pucks deflect in and you just can't do anything right. Last night was a night when there was a lot of action around the net and he was able to either make the save or be in a position where the puck would either deflect off him and he was able to keep it out.
It's funny you say that, Each, because there are times where you're rolling and it's going well, and like you said, you get those bounces. You hit posts. Guys miss open nets. Things happen that shouldn't. It hits you in the knob of your stick when you weren't even looking. Yeah. And then there's times where it's not going your way, and it goes in off your defenseman's skate, and it hits your glove and dribbles in. And so it's hard to explain, but there are times it is a little bit of luck. It's where preparation meets opportunity, right? Exactly. So obviously you're doing good things, but sometimes you do need a little help and a little opportunity, and that can lead to a game like last night.
And how about Dylan Cozens? That was such a weird play, that power play goal, because it starts at the point, and a shot by one of the Ottawa players, his stick just breaks, it explodes, it goes up in the air in the corner, and you're going to see it here. It's going to be that one-time shot by Stützle. That stick is flying. Good job by Tkachuk to kind of corral that puck, and then it was Sanderson over to Cozens, and a great play by Sanderson. The Wings got kind of all puck focused in the corner. Yeah. 3 guys over there, and just a good finish by Cozens. He's not missing that one.
No, absolutely not. No, those broken plays where sometimes as a defensive team, it breaks down and you're sort of saying, oh, now we're in Mayday here, or now we have an opportunity to go. And I think the play, as you mentioned, was Brady Tkachuk there along the wall, because when Detroit saw that broken stick puck go behind the goal line, they said, oh, now we can attack and put puck pressure on. Yeah. So 2-3 guys went towards the corner to get the puck, and you watch here, Brady Tkachuk just beats 2 guys right there with that little play, and they got 3 below the goal line, and now all of a sudden you make that nice play. There's a ton of space up there. So sometimes as a defensive team, you say, oh, here's a chance to go, but you got to go and you got to eliminate the play. You can't let them come out of the corner with that puck.
Yeah, and for Detroit, I mean, I feel like they're almost snake bit right now because they did everything right in this game, almost everything, right? Yeah. And yet here they are, 0-6. They had a bad March last year that left them on the outside looking in. And you can see here, I mean, just not scoring right now. Shot differential is a positive, but they're not winning.
Yeah, it's tough, and you feel for them, especially after last year getting so close, and then the last day of the year not getting in. This is a team, there's a reason their coach was fired.
That's right.
They weren't a great 5-on-5 scoring team. Their penalty kill struggled. Their power plays carried them at times. But the power play can come and go. And you're seeing when your power play is not scoring and you can't score 5-on-5 consistently, it's hard to generate offense. I know they threw everything at the net last night, but there's also a reason that your goalie makes 48 saves because maybe Detroit they don't have the horses right now. They're not finding the back of the net. They don't have the finishing. And unfortunately, it's resulting in this slide. They've played well during parts of it, but that doesn't matter in March because now they're fading out of the playoff picture pretty quickly.
Yeah, and they got to get it going. They acquired Mrazek, too, at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised. I mean, you acquired him. I thought he might. And it wasn't Talbot's fault. They lost 2-1. You saw the goal. It was nothing he could do. But they did acquire Mrazek. I guess he's going to play soon.
It has to. I mean, they got 3 of them again. They went from 3 to got rid of Husso and cleared out that log jam.
You hate that, right? 3 goalies.
Yeah, I never liked that in practice.
Nobody likes it, right? The coaches don't like it.
Exactly.
And then you goalies, you got your equipment. Where does it go? There's only 2 nets. You're taking turns.
Taking a quarter of the shots, you just never get into the. And they don't practice anymore either. And this time of year, you have very few practices. So a lot of times it's you and the extra guys or 2 goalies and the extra guys taking shots. And you just want a full practice to get that rhythm and pacing and timing. So it is a tricky thing to get through.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with the Wings. They got to get back on track. They've lost 6 in a row. Out west, the Colorado Avalanche got it done last night, and Nathan MacKinnon, 1,000th point of his career, and boy, he is so much fun to watch. Avalanche with all the moves they made, MacKinnon getting it going, and they win this one 3-0 over Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, a bit of a perfunctory victory. You know, you pictured they were going to go in there and win, but it was a little tighter than you thought. But man, Nate MacKinnon. Yeah, I remember guys late in their 30s getting to 1,000 points. They're like, oh, wow, after this long, illustrious career, you get to 1,000 points. And now you got McDavid and MacKinnon in their late 20s hitting 1,000. It's kind of like, ho-hum. I mean, these guys are incredible. Nate MacKinnon has been just out of this world this year again. And, I really like where this Avalanche team's going after the deadline.
Yeah, MacKinnon, the 4th fastest to 1,000 points among active players. And you can see here just the 3rd Avalanche player, Sakic and Stastny, to get over 1,000 points. Of course, the Nordique.
Bring those jerseys back, can we?
Oh, you like those?
I love the Nordique jerseys.
Yeah, passionate fans up there. I'll tell you, that was a time in the '80s.
Sure was.
With the Nordiques and the Canadians, but they're in Colorado and continue to be a really good team. And so good for MacKinnon. The Avs are back in action tonight. They're taking on the Minnesota Wild, and that's that's a kind of a chase now for that 3rd spot. It will be 2nd of a back-to-back for Colorado. Minnesota's had all kinds of injuries. So as you look at the playoff standings here in the Central Division, right, the Wild are now falling back 4 points behind the Avs. The Avs have played 1 more game. The Wild have just had so many injuries. I mean, it seems destined that the Avalanche are going to finish in that 2-3. I mean, the Stars are inching up on the Jets. But I guess this is we're going to see. I mean, for the Stars, it would be advantageous, I would imagine, for them to finish first. But I mean, last year I think they finished first, and they ended up playing the Vegas Golden Knights, who were the 8th seed. So maybe it doesn't always help you. But for tonight's game with the Wild, I mean, how do you see this one for Minnie? I mean, obviously, if they want to finish 3rd, they better win tonight and kind of continue to push forward.
Yeah, and I think for Minnie, you mentioned it, like just the injury luck has been brutal for them. They've been hit hard. They have the dead cap space. They couldn't do much at the deadline. Gustafsson, who was so good early in the year, has been struggling a little bit, kind of come back to earth, so they're not getting the goaltending they were to start the year. So for them, it's more about hanging on to your playoff spot. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to fall out of it, but you got to start looking behind you as well as ahead of you. And what the Stars and the Avalanche did at the deadline, plus how good Winnipeg's been all year, I think, for Minnesota, you're trying to hang on to your spot and keep that gap between you and the Flames and the Canucks. And you mentioned Colorado. I mean, I think getting that 1st seed in the Central as well as the Atlantic in the East, it'll make your path slightly easier.
Yeah.
Having to go through 2 of those teams just to get to the conference finals, and now you're all beat up. I think there will be something to be said. I'm curious if Dallas is going to track down Winnipeg. That's what I'm paying attention to.
And they're playing well.
They're a wagon right now.
Yeah.
And Winnipeg, they've been great all year, but it's hard to sustain that the entire season. So it's going to be a dogfight, but I think getting that number 1 seed in at least the Atlantic and the Central for sure is going to help a team out a lot in their chances to get to the Stanley Cup Finals.
I think we saw that in the West last year for Dallas because
Yeah.
they had to go through Vegas and Colorado in the first 2 rounds.
Right.
7 games with Vegas. They had to rally in that series to get it done, but they win in 7. They took out Colorado in 5.
Yeah.
So you thought they were in good shape, but in that next series against the Oilers, those high-tempo games that are high-intensity games against a team like Vegas, like Colorado, it seemed to wear on the Dallas Stars last year. So I agree with you. I think whoever can win those divisions, they'll put themselves in a better place.
Yes. Again,
It doesn't mean it's a given.
Right. Not at all.
But you're in a little better place.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about the moves for Colorado, by the way, before we move on? I mean, to have those guys lined up,
Yeah.
Nelson, Coyle, Drury behind McKinnon. Woof.
I love it. I mean, you usually don't see cup contending teams or teams as good as Colorado remake their roster like that on the fly. Both goalies out, Rantanen out, the guys they brought in. I love the size, especially out west, where it's going to be a grind, as we mentioned. Brock Nelson's a big guy. He's slippery, but he's feisty. He's not afraid to get in there and mix it up and give you an extra shot. He plays with a little bit of an edge. Charlie Coyle, I think, was a little miscast in Boston. It's like a number 2 center, but he's a great number 3. He's a horse. He's such a strong kid. So I think having that size and strength and speed down the middle, you can roll those lines out, that depth. I think that's what can get you through those grinding series that you said can take a lot out of you. So I think Colorado definitely set themselves up to play a heavier, harder style of hockey in the playoffs.
Yeah, and the Avalanche and Stars play this weekend, so that'll be fun to see how that plays out. Back in the East, we got the Lightning and the Hurricanes going head-to-head tonight, so that should be an interesting matchup as well. Of course, a lot of discussion about the Hurricanes. They traded for Rantanen. They couldn't keep him. They trade him to Dallas. He signs there. They get Stankoven back, and Stankoven scored in their first game they played, or his first game on Sunday, had a power play goal against the Winnipeg Jets. It was a good win for the Hurricanes. I think Stankoven is going to be a really good Hurricane because they talk about Rantanen didn't necessarily fit in the Roddy system there. I think Logan Stankoven will fit just fine because he is just straight ahead all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's kind of the forgotten piece in all of this. That he was an early Calder favorite. He had a good start. He's a highly rated prospect from Dallas. As you mentioned, though, he's not afraid to go to the dirty areas, even though he's not a big guy. And look, I mean, as we mentioned, that Atlantic is a real bear. But I think Carolina, you can't sleep on them right now. They're still a good team.
They're in a good spot, right?
They're in
the Metro.
Exactly.
And they're likely going to be second.
Jersey or Columbus maybe in the first round, and then
winnable series.
Washington, we think they're obviously very good, but maybe more vulnerable than those 3 teams in the Atlantic. So if you're Carolina, you're sitting there saying, hey, let's go about our business here.
Yeah.
Let the dust settle. Let Stankoven work his way in, Jankowski, and hey, maybe we can make some noise and get to the conference finals. And we got to play a team that had to go through the Atlantic, and now your path is there. But again, we're all sort of speculating here, but the path, you can look at the path.
None of these series are easy. You said it, the path.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can, and let me ask you this. You played, so you understand, we're on the outside, and I'm always talking about the path, that it'll be easier. In the room, or on the bus, or on the plane, you guys are talking. Are you talking about those things? Or you guys know better that, hey, whoever we get, we get?
I mean, I think it depends. It depends on your team. If you know you're a good team, you sort of say, hey, look, we're a really good team. We feel confident against anybody, that we can match up well with anybody. But you do scoreboard watch. You're paying attention. You're looking at the standings every day. They have them up in the locker room. And I think at some points, you know in the back of your head, hey, we match up really well with this team, but that team gives us some trouble. So you're never going to tank or try to do something to get a certain matchup, but I think going into a series saying, hey, these guys are vulnerable, we can catch them, or we really got to be on our guard here because this team can surprise us if we're not ready. So
that is something guys talk about.
Absolutely, 1,000%.
It's nice to be on those teams where you feel really good. You're like, hey, bring it on.
You're Florida, you're sitting there saying, we can play any kind of game you want to play. So
that's right.
We'll take on anybody.
Yeah, amazing. So, hey, Florida Panthers, you brought them up. They're in action tonight against the Boston Bruins, and it was an interesting morning at the TD
Did not
Garden.
expect this.
I mean, Brad Marchand in the full gear out there, taking the line shifts and everything, almost like he was going to play tonight. Now, they said afterwards it's still week to week, but this is maybe a little bit of a troll job here by Brad Marchand in the building that he was a star for the Bruins for so long.
If there's one guy who would duct tape his shoulder or body back together to get out there just to stick it to his old team, it would probably be him. But, I got to tell you, Jay, one of the weirdest things that I've ever experienced in my career was the first time I got traded. you've only been in Vancouver, been in Boston, and you go into that building for the first time, and you're like, I've never been in the loading bay where the bus comes in, and I've never walked down this hallway to get to the dressing room. Like, is this what the visiting rooms look like? Like, there's certain things where you just
no idea. Why would you?
Exactly. So it's a weird feeling to come back in there, and especially this closely after the trade, and kind of you're not at home anymore, and that's a weird feeling. So at least he's not playing tonight, but he gets to go through that process now. So whenever it may happen, it may not happen. We don't know. He sort of laid a few crumbs out there that he might come back, but it's a weird feeling for sure.
Yeah, he did have a little bit of that with the Four Nations, right? Because he's on Team Canada. That's true. That's kind of almost like a different thing altogether.
Still your house.
Because that's such a crazy event, right? Whereas you come back now, you're the Florida Panthers. It's a regular NHL, a regular season game. It's a little bit strange. So it'll be very interesting to see how that unfolds over time. He's not going to play tonight from all accounts. I mean,
that's it, right? They're not playing again, or he's not back in Boston.
Yeah, no, not for this year. And then we'll see what happens if he decides to re-sign there, because the future, I mean, he's there as a rental right now. And we'll see, first of all, get healthy.
Yes.
And get back in the lineup, and then to see if he decides to test the market. Or I would imagine you go to Florida, the weather is nice. If you have a great experience there, maybe they win the Stanley Cup, that might change his thinking altogether about being there long term, correct?
Absolutely. That's what organizations hope to do, is to get you in there and sell you on what they have. And that's Florida can do it as well as anybody right now. Everybody wants to go there. But, he clearly wanted to stay in Boston. It sounded like he really wanted to get something done, and the team just didn't meet him where he wanted. I don't know how that changes over the summer. Maybe it does. But as you said, Florida, Stanley Cup, pretty good to me.
I see those guys driving around with their golf carts right in the street. I mean, it seems like a good deal to me.
You're selling me already.
I know. I'm ready to go. So, hey, Paul Maurice always, he's always an interesting character when it comes to talking about Steve. How about this remark? He was asked about, like, the locker room with all the different, Marchand being in. He goes, we've got some strange dudes in there.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great way to put it. I mean, I'm a big Red Sox fan, so back in 2004 is a bunch of idiots, and I just picture lining up against Marchand, Bennett, and Kachuk on the other side, opening the game, being like, we might be in one tonight here.
That is the Hanson brothers, right? I mean, that's kind of the Hanson brothers. Yeah, I mean, that would be, we hope we get that at some point, because when those guys are all healthy, and we're still waiting on Matt Kachuk, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that would be an option. In games, right? You're looking to change the tempo of a game, the dynamic of a game. You couldn't find three guys that'll stir the pot.
For sure.
Like those three.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, lining up against them for 7-game series, it's, they have the grit, they have the skill. That's why they're annoying and hard to play against, because it's one thing to play against a guy who plays on the edge, but when he's also really good at hockey, that makes it even harder, because it's like, well, you can also make me look silly. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword. Yeah,
so Brad Marchand, we'll wait to see how things go in Florida, but he was out there this morning. At some point he's going to play, and it'll be funny to watch to see him in that Florida Panthers uniform. One guy we will not be seeing in a Panthers uniform for the next 20 games is Aaron Ekblad. This news came out after our show yesterday. Here's from Elliot Friedman. The NHL announces Aaron Ekblad suspended 20 games for violating the NHLPA Performance-Enhancing Substances Program. Aaron Ekblad gave a statement afterwards through the NHLPA, and he said, as the NHL announced, I have been suspended for violating the NHLPA Performance-Enhancing Substances Program. The news that I had failed a random drug test was a shock. Ultimately, I made a mistake by taking something to help me recover from recent injuries without first checking with proper medical and team personnel. I have let my teammates, the Florida Panthers organization, and our great fans down. For that, I am truly sorry. I have accepted the responsibility for my mistake and will be fully prepared to return to my team when my suspension is over. I have learned a hard lesson and could not wait to be back with my teammates. So it was shocking kind of news. Whenever we have this in the NHL, it happens from time to time. It is kind of a shocking thing because we don't see it all the time. And, guys go through injuries. They're trying to get back in the lineup. I mean, you dealt with injuries in your career. I'm not going to sit here and really I'm not in that room. And I don't know what guys are trying to do to get back from injuries, but it seems like something that could happen.
Absolutely. And I think the tough part here, he owned up to it. He didn't hide from it. He said exactly what he felt. And he sounds like there's some contrition there that he really
for sure
feels bad about it. The other side of it, though, is that he's been in the league a long time. And every year you have a meeting at the start of the year with the league about substance abuse policies and drugs and PEDs, and they tell you don't take anything that isn't from your team or you don't know where it came from because you are responsible for what you put in your body. and clearly he felt he had something that was safe. It must have been outside the purview of his team because everything they give you is NSF
They've
approved.
probably tested it. They know what's in there.
Yes, it's on
right?
the league list. So, again, he's been around long enough. And now the thing for me is they're in first place. And we just talked about how important being in first. They're out without Matthew Tkachuk. Now they're without him. So, yes, he may come back in the playoffs in Game 3 and everything will be fine. But what if they slide to second place and they got to play Tampa instead of, no offense, Columbus or Ottawa, and that could cost them. So he's a veteran guy. Again, obviously feels badly about it, but it's like it's a mistake that you should avoid at this point.
Well, it makes the acquisition of Seth Jones a little better for them because, as you can see here, Ekblad was up 23.5 minutes. So he's out of the picture for the last 18 games of the regular season.
A lot
which,
of minutes.
as you point out, could directly impact what's going to happen with this team, where they're going to finish the regular season. Seth being there, right shot defenseman there. You can see the pairs there. Jones kind of slides up with Forsling, and then, they kind of move things back the way they were, but still not ideal.
Yeah.
And I've been around Aaron, throughout his career. I think he's a terrific guy. I always enjoy chatting with him, so I wish him nothing but the best. And you feel bad for him, but this is, an unfortunate circumstance, and we'll see how it affects the Panthers.
That's right.
Nothing seems to bother the Panthers, though.
I was going to say, this may just be an asterisk, and you never, it happens, and they get past, and they go to the Stanley Cup Finals again. But, again, everything matters right now in this season, especially with some of the uncertainty about Matthew Tkachuk and how effective they're going to be come playoff time. But, again, if there's a team that can probably withstand it and handle it, it's the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, it seems like that's the case. So they're in action tonight against the Bruins. 11 games on the docket. When we come back, we'll talk about the Jackets. They've got a big one at the Rock tonight against the Devils. They're trying to track down the Devils in the standings. Talk Jackets next on First Shift. $11 games on the slate for this Tuesday. You can see the early games there. Talked about the Panthers and Bruins. A little bit later on, Avs and Wilds. Got the Kings out west taking on the Islanders. Ovi in action in Anaheim. The chase continues. So 11 games on the docket. Here's a look at the Eastern Conference playoff picture. And as you can see there, like the Devils at 74 points. Only a couple weeks ago, they were locked into that spot. But look out, because here come the Blue Jackets, only 4 points back, and they have 2 games in hand. Those 2 teams play tonight. So let's talk a little bit about the Jackets. They score.
They can.
I mean, I think they have the 3rd most goals in the Eastern Conference right now. And that's like when we talked about the Blue Jackets in the past, we never talked about the high-flying Blue Jackets.
No,
it was if
really.
they won, it was Bobrovsky played well.
Yep.
The Torts era, they defended well. This team scores.
They're a lot of fun to watch, and we had Matthew Olivier in studio in person yesterday, and we talked to him, and you could tell off camera even they believe. Their coach, Dean Evison, has them all playing well together. Everyone knows their role. They're being rewarded for playing well. Their GM didn't subtract anybody at the deadline.
Added Luke Kunin. I like him.
I do too. He fits that identity perfectly. So this is a fun Columbus Blue Jackets team to watch, and a team that you can't help but root for after everything they've been through this year. So again, the Devils, they're kind of like the Wild right now. They're missing their number 1 center, their number 1 defenseman. They just got their number 1 goalie back. So they're vulnerable. They're there for the taking, I think, and not for any reason other than they just have run into some bad luck to their best players. So this is a massive game for Columbus if they want to maybe track down the Devils and get into that 3rd spot.
And let's talk a little bit about Adam Fantilli because now he was a high draft pick, the 2nd overall pick in the draft. They expect him to come in and do well. It takes a little time. But take a look. In 22 games since Sean Monahan went out of the lineup, got 22 points. He's a big plus there, a plus 12. He had the hat trick at the Garden the other night. I mean, Fantilli is starting to find his way as a young player in this league. Yeah,
this is perfect timing, too. Your number 1 center goes down, who's been great all year, and you have that number 2 pick who you want to be patient with, right? You understand it takes time. The development's going to take time, but for him to pop right now and just lead this team at this time of year, maybe this is that step he's taking. This is where these guys kind of have their coming out party, and everybody wants that big centerman down the middle, especially in the spring, in the playoffs. Your Barkov, your McKinnon, guys like that. So if Fantilli can continue this and keep this up going forward, then the Jackets are in really good shape here.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting week because they play the Devils twice. They play the Rangers coming up, so it's an important week for the Jackets. You mentioned the injuries to the Devils, and obviously Jack Hughes drives a lot of offense for the Devils, so they miss him. But I want to circle in on Dougie Hamilton because as a goalie, you're back there, and your number one defenseman goes out of the lineup. Now, Dougie Hamilton is not known as a great defender, but he has the puck a lot. He plays a lot of minutes. How does that impact the group around the Devils now? Without him out, with him out, someone else has to step up. It changes a lot of things.
I mean, you nailed it. I think just the slotting, the pairings, the where guys are playing, who they're playing against. I mean, the power play is one thing. They have a terrific power play, but a lot of that's because Dougie Hamilton's at the top. He's one of the best guys shooting it through, getting it down to the net front. But when you're back there as a goalie, this guy transports the puck. He's one pass and you're out. He evades pressure, makes a move, and we're gone. So when you lose that element, it just puts a lot more of a burden on the other guys who maybe aren't quite as suited for that role. You know, you're playing guys up in the lineup against better competition, so it can really kind of throw your dynamic off back there or put guys in positions they're not used to. And eventually over time, you can get exposed. I mean, for a few games, you can do it. You can play well. You can replicate what he does, but over the course of 10, 20 games, teams start to pick at you. Guys eventually...
Because you are who you are.
You are who you are.
Right?
Nothing wrong. It's just you're forced to play the number 2 role when you're a number 4 guy. And that can catch up to you over time. So hopefully they get him back sooner than later and can get in the playoffs, because they've had a great season up until about the new year, and then since then it's just been, you know, tough injuries, tough luck, just haven't been as consistent.
How is it working a new guy in too? Because like Dumoulin, it just comes over now. For that kind of that give and take with the goalie, is that tricky?
It can be. I mean, Dumoulin's a pro. He's been around a long time. He's been on some good teams. Won Stanley Cup, so he's no rookie. But you know, as a goalie, you got to get to know guys. You got to get to know. Hey, do you like to slide? Do you drop? What do you do on the penalty kill? How do you block your shots? Where do you want your stick positioning when I'm trying to defend the pass? How do you communicate when you're exchanging the puck behind the net? So they're all little things that hopefully you can clean up quickly. But for him too, it's a new system to learn. It's a new group of guys to learn. New guys you have to communicate with. So you got to get up to speed pretty quickly here, especially when you're trying to hunt down a playoff spot. Yeah.
So Devils and Jackets tonight at the Rock, 7 o'clock. The Rangers are out in Winnipeg, and the Rangers have a tricky week because they're a 3-game road trip. They've got the Jets, the Wild, and then in Columbus, a big game with the Jackets. And then right after that game, they're back to Madison Square Garden to take on the Edmonton Oilers, who will be waiting for them. So for the Rangers, a very, very busy week. I mean, that was not a good weekend, losing to Ottawa. They gave up a 2-goal lead in Ottawa, and then they had the game tied up at the Garden 3-3, and then they give up 4 straight goals. And here are the numbers. You can see the Rangers, points-wise, not far out of it.
No.
But they've played one more game, so that works against them. And this schedule this week, it almost seems like it's kind of do or die to get it going in the right direction or fall back in the pack a little bit.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who believe in the Rangers getting in the playoffs just because of their elite talent, the Shesterkins, the Millers.
And they've been in the playoffs.
And they've been in the
experience,
exactly.
Right?
You sort of expect them to be there, but you mentioned it. Winnipeg, one of the best home teams in the league. That's a tough one tonight. A desperate Minnesota team. Columbus, Edmonton, it doesn't get any easier. So as you said, they've been Jekyll and Hyde all year. I mean, for longer stretches than we would like. But even now, as you mentioned, when they're starting to play well, turning it around, they lose 7-3 to Columbus at home, and they blow the game in Ottawa that they should have won. So I still don't really know what to expect from this group. So I think we'll find out a lot, as you said, and maybe they'll just go 2-2, and we'll be in the same position. But they need to get points here. They can't have a 1-3 or an 0-3-1 type of week, because, like you said, there are other teams even behind them that are sniffing. The Canadians, the Red Wings are still there, the Bruins are still alive.
Yeah,
so
Islanders aren't that far out.
Islanders, so it's not as if they're free and clear of everybody else behind them. So you want to keep that separation if you can.
Yeah, so the Rangers in Winnipeg taking on the Jets tonight, and as I say, a very important week for the New York Rangers. When we come back, Joe Lemire will join us. He is a senior writer at Sports Business Journal, talking about some of the new tech innovations around the NHL next on First Shift. All right, so the Bruins and Panthers playing tonight in Boston. The game is on, but they're going to do an alt-cast, and you can see here it's going to be best snow day ever. It'll be on NESN Plus and on NESN 360 app, 7 o'clock. And the idea is it's an imaginary snow day with no school, following Blades, the Bruins mascot, as he's transported into a snow globe of a Bruins adventure. You can see Adam Pellerin and Andrew Ferentz, the former Bruin, will be on the call for that. So we're seeing more and more of these now. And to talk about a little what the NHL is trying to do, we bring in Joe Lemire, who is senior writer for Sports Business Journal. Joe, thanks for the time today. You recently hosted a panel, I guess, at Tech Week with Sports Business Journal hosts with the Commissioner Gary Bettman. You did a story on it. Fill us in on what the league is doing with more and more of these altcasts that seem to be more regionalized or localized even as they move forward.
Absolutely. Commissioner Bettman talked about wanting to reach new and younger fans. He said for maybe those who haven't been exposed to the sport much before. We're going to entertain and amuse you, and then hope you're going to want to come back and learn more about the sport, and hopefully find an entry point to hook them into interest. We saw the past 2 years the national broadcast with Big City Greens. I remember some of the TV ratings points from that first one were very interesting. I guess for an average NHL game, it's about 60% male viewers and 40% female. For that one, it was actually flipped. It was about 60% female were watching the animated altcast. And depending on exactly which platform they were watching, the average age was in the 10 to 12 range. So you're certainly seeing a whole new audience than you're used to being, that are, rather than you're accustomed to seeing for, the traditional broadcast of an NHL game. And they saw success with that for 2 years. And yeah, and now they're trying to reach new audiences. I think one of the more compelling ones, it actually is going to be the first Spanish language animated altcast.
Wow.
As well as a whole bunch of regional ones.
That's awesome. I mean, I have small kids, and they enjoy watching hockey, but I find when you bring that all-cast element of more of the cartoon sort of element, I'm curious, too, about the technical aspect. How difficult is this? Because it's done in real time. You're trying to line up the game with these animated graphics and the guys commentating, Andrew Ference and Pellerin, and how do you coordinate all those technical aspects to make it happen in real time?
Yeah, it's certainly beyond my direct understanding, but I can tell you that there's a company called Beyond Sports based in the Netherlands that had shown enough promise in being able to take the real time, for hockey, the puck and player tracking, the NHL Edge system, and rendering that in these animated forms. They're Sony acquired them, and they're also the technology behind the NBA did a Disney game on Christmas Day with Mickey Mouse and so forth. But the idea is you take the puck and player tracking, and recent additions, they've also been using the Hawkeye optical cameras. And so you have these two tracking data inputs, and they blend them together. So the puck and player tracking tells you where an athlete is or where the puck is. But the Hawkeye, by being able to track the limbs and the stick, you have a lot more contextual information about which way they're facing, how they're moving. And the Beyond Sports magic, and an ESPN producer even used that phrase, Beyond Sports magic, is that they're able to do that in real time and convert it into the animated allcast that you see.
Joe, the thing that struck me is this idea of making these things a little bit more local. Now, some of them, as you mentioned, the Spanish altcast, and I believe there's one in Canada that's going to be, a more national one. And here is the schedule of these 5 animated altcast games coming up, and they got some good games. I mean, the Stars Avalanche. I don't know if you're going to get any better than that. So that's coming up next week. But the idea of the local end, like the Nashville game. It's going to be on a local channel in Nashville. What was the thinking from the commissioner on trying to localize some of these things into the individual markets?
I think in addition to wanting to add more national hockey fans, if you just have Bruins Penguins, that was the second Big City Greens Classic last year, and there were some fun gimmicks where, like on power plays, the Bruins players turned into actual bears on the ice, and the Penguins did the same. If let's say you are in Dallas, and you're a Stars fan or a potential Stars fan, that game, the cartoon imagery might draw in some interest, but it's not going to help build a Dallas Stars fan. Yeah. And I think, ideally you'd start to have these all across the country, and every market might have that same sort of entry point into fandom. But this gives a lot of local fans a chance to start rooting for their own team, developing that favorite team interest, maybe having a favorite player. There are a remarkable number of studies that show that the earlier you can get a fan interested, the more likely they are to stay that fan for life, particularly if you can get them in the building and attend a game.
Well, not to cross sports, but I remember this season in the NFL, they did a Simpsons altcast for Monday Night Football, and I grew up a big Simpsons fan, so I tuned into that for a little bit. So I was like, this is pretty cool. So, and just going back to the regionalized versions of this, so who's driving these ideas more? Is it more the NHL is pushing these and saying, hey, we'd like to work with NESN, we'd like to work with Dallas, or is it the local channels and the tech companies that are sort of saying, hey, let's all come together and figure out an idea and a cool concept that we think locally people will enjoy watching?
Yeah, my understanding is that the NHL wanted to prove out the technology, and so they sort of took it on their own to do those first couple of ones, making sure that the it all worked as it should. And from that point forward, you've started to see regional networks kind of come forward and say, hey, we want to do this too. There actually was one regional game last year that the Chicago Blackhawks led, and now a lot more are coming forward. And it's just it's fun that almost all of them include whatever the local team's mascot is, and there's no better way to get kids excited than having fun cartoons, and hopefully the sport, something about the sport speaks to them too. And I guess a key other element I should mention is that there's a lot of education that goes along with it. Certainly the Big City Greens ones would pause every so often and they'd have a cartoon character explain what offsides is or things of that nature. This Bruins one tonight actually includes a lot of both STEM knowledge, but also history of Boston. And so they're trying to use it as a vehicle for education as well.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I really like it, and I like it in the local markets. I think that was really some heads-up thinking by everybody involved. You had a chance to be on that panel and kind of host that panel with the commissioner, among others. Let me ask you about this idea of these hockey tech labs. Apparently there's going to be one at the Prudential Center. What can you tell us about that and let the viewers know? Here's the tweet that you had, NHL and Verizon planning a hockey tech lab at Prudential. What's the backstory?
Yeah, it's formalizing something that had kind of informally been in place already. Prudential Center being a very modern building in close proximity to NHL headquarters had been one of the first to get the puck and player tracking system installed as they were working through the early iterations of that. It also had been used as the site of the first, the NHL has been doing more or less annual tech innovation summits where they bring in a lot of partners, both the established ones like a Verizon or an AWS, but also some startups that have some interesting ideas. That's actually where I first met the team from Beyond Sports, was at the Prudential Center a few years ago. This one's going to be a lot more elaborate. In partnership with Verizon, they're actually carving out a space that's going to be between the main rink of Prudential Center and the practice rink, where they're going to have a dedicated accelerator incubation kind of space, and things that they develop there can be brought to the rinks, the ice sheets that they have to test out. And it could be something that helps with officiating. It could be something that that Verizon's doing with a private network to make sure that there's better communication from the bench to someone up in the booth, things of that nature. I think the idea is it's a very wide remit. The fact that it's in the Prudential Center doesn't mean it's actually going to help the Devils any more than any other team. And it's early going, but if it's successful, I think the idea is you might have more of these at other venues across the country too.
Yeah, it makes sense to have it in a rink where they have the practice facility right there, because you can carry from one place to another and then into the main rink. So makes sense. I'll be keeping an eye on that. Joe, thanks for the time today. I really appreciate it. It's interesting to find out about these. The world is changing fast, sometimes too fast for me, but we appreciate you kind of slowing it down for us a little bit here. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right.
Thanks,
Joe Lemire joining us today. And coming up next, well, JD is back. We'll see if he's going to stay hot. Top Line Parlay next on First Shift. It's time for the Top Line Parlay presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. And with that, we bring in our producer, J.D. Lindbergh, and the master of the parlay. Hey, listen, you've had a good year. I mean, I told you, I saw your wife's out there driving a new car around town. I mean, things are good in the Lindbergh household, but they tried to cool you off. You've missed a couple of these now. So the question is, Corey, can he pick up where he left off?
It's like ice in the kicker. I've had a couple weeks off from the parlay just through scheduling quirks.
Yes.
But yeah, let's try and get back on the beam. Let's take a look at the big board for what we got cooking on a Tuesday. 11 games to choose from, and we're starting with the Jackets and the Devils. I like the Jackets first period puck line plus 0.5. That just means they can be tied and we can win this bet. Jackets not as good on the road, but let's take a look at their goal differential by period on the road. They're actually, the first period is their best period.
Yes.
So as long as the Jackets are tied or leading, that's our first leg, hitting it. Back to the big board here, Dan. Carter Verhaeghe, this one, shout out to Lawrence Goldstein, the great LG. Carter Verhaeghe loves playing in Boston. This guy owns the Bees at TD Garden. His last 10 games against the Bruins at hit the Garden, including the playoffs. Follow me here, Danny Font 3, please. It's the 4 goals, 6 assists. That is 10 points. That's a point a game, if my math is correct.
Correct.
There. 10
I like
and 10.
those 30 shots, too.
Yeah, 30
right.
shots.
So he's getting after it. So we like Verhaeghe, anytime goal scorer, a healthy plus 205.
Those 3
Back to the
game-winning
big board
goals,
one
either.
more time here.
big game player.
I remember a couple of those each.
Yes, you do.
Lane Hudson, a definite Calder contender here. He did not get a point his last time out. I like him to record a point tonight, and here's why. His last 5 games, 6 assists, and that's without getting a point his last time out. He didn't get held off the score sheet in multiple games very often. So we like Lane Hudson to get on the score sheet tonight. Fellas, what do we think of the parlay?
Well, first of all, let's be honest with our dear friend and one of the great researchers of all time, Lawrence Goldstein. Does he have this information, do you think, JD, if the Florida Panthers are playing the Calgary Flames tonight? Is he that dialed in, or is it because the Bruins are involved?
Ooh, good
Look,
question.
I give Lawrence credit. I think that he would have that number regardless. He pulls up nuggets on all sorts of great games. Even the
True.
Sharks and the Predators. Was that the one that we didn't assign out for the packet? Yeah, I'm getting an affirmative there.
Okay.
However, because it is the Bruins, who we both hold near and dear to our hearts,
Yes.
I think that was like top of mind for Lawrence.
Yeah.
I was very detailed. I thought it was very, like, really into the minutia there. So I appreciate
I like
these
that, yeah.
somewhat obscure parlays that have things you may not have thought about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to make the shifties a little money here. It's been too long. There's been a couple of flubs here. So
I like it. Get
let's
back
get
on the
back on the
saddle.
couple
beam,
of
you know?
flubs. Are you referring to Chris Collins and
no
Sanford
names.
Appel?
No names here. It's just, it is what it is. It's hard picking these parlays.
It really is. It really is. It's not easy, and you've done a really good job at it. You get help from our great research team, from Lawrence and Mark and everybody else that are involved in it. So they give you good help. But I like that you do that. You guys put that together and you give reasons for the selection,
Yes.
which is nice.
Well, one time you asked me for a reason why, and I didn't have a good one. So from then on, I was like, let me get a full screen at least. Like, let me pretend like I know what I'm talking
It's like
about.
in school, show your work, right? You can't just
That's
have the
right.
answer. You got to show how you got there.
yeah.
There's that Massachusetts education.
There it is.
There it is.
Danny, let's get out of here. They're pumping my tires
All
too
right.
much. Hit the bump. When
Yeah.
first shift returns, we got one more segment. The Great Chase. Got to stay up a little late. The Caps begin a California trip. We're talking Obi next.
Nice.
DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NHL. And this week, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code FLY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Capitals in action tonight, and here's a tweet from earlier today. That's Alex Ovechkin's 2 children. Show your support for the Chase with a lawn sign, and you can see it there, Cap team stores. They were starting at 11 a.m., so I don't know if they have any left, but get over there if you want one. That's how it looks out front. It looks like it's at the Capitals facility there or something, so very nice, and everybody's getting involved, Corey. The Chase is coming down to the wire.
I love it. I really hope it happens like this season.
Yeah.
Springtime, playoff chase. And I love that they're good this year, too.
They are.
Imagine
It's
if they
not-
were like out of the
yeah,
playoffs and you're
yeah.
sort of, all right, we're going to watch. Because it's like they're good, he's good. Let's have it happen right now in April or something like that, just so we don't have to wait an entire summer and have it happen on a random October night next fall.
Great point.
I want to see it happen now. He's on the pace.
It's
It's
building.
incredible. It's incredible, man.
building.
Yeah, and I love the support and the energy because people
No
are really
question.
getting involved. This is a big deal, this
Yeah,
record.
no question about it. Then we got another note about the Chase here, and this is, from Monumental Sports. I mean, a lot has been made. Like, when these records occur, right, the local fans and really the broadcasters themselves, they want to call these games. And, like, there are going to be Capitals games that are on TNT or they're on ESPN. The Capitals are going to, and Monumental Sports, Joe Beninati and Alan May and then Craig Laughlin. Hopefully Craig is doing well. Hopefully he gets back at some point soon. But they will be calling the games to archive them and to have the live call that fans can appreciate as well. You see this during Stanley Cup Finals sometimes. I think it's a great move by Monumental because, again, Joe B. talked about it there, Joe Beninati and Craig, and hopefully he's going to be back at some point. And Alan, they're part of the team. They've documented the guy's whole life.
Yeah, I mean,
Or whole career, certainly.
Exactly. I think this is the right move because, when we go back and we rewatch this clip, you want to hear Joe's voice doing the call.
Yeah.
You know, like, no disrespect to the national guys,
No.
but, you know, they see Ovi once, twice a year maybe. It's not quite the same. As a fan, as a Capitals fan, you want to hear your local guy give that emphatic call of the game, of the record-breaking goal, and I think it's the right move. I mean, ESPN or TNT, whoever has the rights to the game, so they get it, but I like this move. I think it's great for the fans and for Ovi himself.
Yeah, I think about the Rangers going back to '94. Like Sam Rosen has to be the voice, right? Like so.
That's what plays every time you see the highlights.
That's how kind of it's a good move by Monumental as the chase continues. And they are in Anaheim today, and Ovi had a chance to catch up here with Teemu Selanne. That's about 1,500 goals right there. Selanne's 684 in his career, 12th overall as we stand right now. But the thing that strikes me is Teemu Selanne is a big guy.
Oh man!
And Ovechkin looks like a monster.
The unit. I mean, I don't think people understand how big he is. It says he's listed at 225, 230. He could be, and this isn't a bad way, but 245, he's a massive.
He's a big, strong.
He's hard to move. He hits
guy.
hard. He's a large human being.
You know what?
Gets a lot of that power
to
from.
show you how big he is, like I don't know if people will remember this because it's years ago now, but I think it was in maybe the 2010 Olympics. Ovechkin and Yager came together at center ice, and Yager was laid out.
Yeah. And
Yogs is a big man.
I played with him, and he is very thick.
Yeah, so it just goes to show you how big and strong Ovechkin is. But good to see Ovechkin and Selanne. What did you say? You rented one of Solanne's houses or something?
One of my years in Winnipeg playing for the Manitoba Moose, we rented a place in the middle of Winnipeg, and apparently Selanne had owned or rented at some point, so it had a really nice little Finnish sauna in the basement.
Oh, very nice.
The house was very modest, so it wasn't anything crazy, but that was the rumor in the early to mid-'90s that he had rented and put a sauna in there because, Finns love their saunas.
Got to have your sauna.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so, listen, you're rolling into town, the American Hockey League, you know?
That's right, feeling pretty big there.
Yeah.
Team was old place, but I love when the legends get together because it's almost like a club where and they sort of you see the handshake there. It's, hey, you know what it's like to score a ton of goals and be this good, and they give each other that look, Yeah,
and Teemu Selanne, one of the great goal scorers in the history of the National Hockey League, too. He has the record for rookie goals in a single season, 76
oh my God,
as a rookie.
I can't even imagine that. That's crazy. I don't think that one's going to
That's not going to get broken, right?
We said that about Wayne's record, too, though.
I know. I guess you never know. Some kid is out there looking at the show right now going, I'm going to break that record.
Hold my Diet Coke.
Yeah.
Juicy juice.
NHL Now coming up next. You better get going. I think you're on that
I gotta
one, too.
take the Batcave down there.
All right.
Let's go.
See you tomorrow.